We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car backed, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listener, thank you so much for coming back again to our conversation with Ngobi Kagayi. Yes, I'm really happy again to have you in this conversation. This is part 2 of the conversation with a poet, a writer, a publisher from Kampala, Uganda, and at the same time, an artist. So, our dear listeners, we are happy to have you again this wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed this part 2 of the conversation.
Welcome to a brand new episode. Hear my true story.
Yes, our dear guest, Kagayi, thank you so much for joining us on the Hear My True Story podcast. Yes, please, I'm really, really excited to have you today, and I don't know what I can say, but could you please maybe introduce yourself to our dear listeners and they get to know you? Who are you?
Otako, thank you so much for having me. I'm equally excited to be featuring on the podcast this week. My name is Kagayi Ngobi, and I am a poet. That is what I do for a living.
So, Kagayi, could you maybe tell us what inspires you to do activism? I mean, to do political poetry. Like your book, there is a poem here, Freedom Is, and then I say a poem, the audience must say amen.
Yes.
What really makes you be so strong to do activism in an environment like Uganda? I'm a Ugandan. I know the political environment of Uganda. I mean, for our dear listeners, the political environment of Uganda is quite not that, I would say, democratic as the way they say it. You need to be a very strong artist, a very strong poet, poet to really speak your mind, speak your voice. Kagayi, you are free to talk about this. Where is the strength coming from to be political in your poems?
I think for me it was, like I said, it was in my upbringing. My parents were they always allowed us to engage with public information about our country. Also, I am passionate about Ugandan history, and my father had so many books I read about Uganda's history. So even when I went to school, for me, I was very passionate about Uganda's history. But beyond that, I was raised by poor parents. That is the truth. My parents I was raised by poor parents who took us to the best schools, because they wanted us to have a better future than one that they had for themselves. And so I lived among children who were privileged, who took for granted the advantages that life had given them. And for me, they were so obvious. We were always chased home for not having school fees and all this. And then also, I was aware that, the poverty that my parents suffered was not inherent. It was structural, because of the government policies, and the corruption and the tribalism that we face, the stereotyping that we face. But so what I wanted was a better society. Even ever since I was young, I was always speaking against human rights. I always spoke against my teachers caning me in school because I was aware of my human rights. I wanted a society that was better for me. And so, and one of the reasons why it was easy for me to stop being a lawyer and become a poet was because through poetry, I realized that I didn't have to wait to graduate. I didn't have to wait to qualify. I had, if I had the space to influence minds and talk about, what I think is going wrong with our country. Why in 1980 we were the same, our economy was at the same level as Singapore, and 30 years down the road we are worse off. And Singapore, took off the right track. Why, our constitution keeps being amended left, right, and center in favor of one political party, And I also understood the role that politics plays in the daily lives of the people, Like if you talk about the price of sugar, the price of bread, the price of oil, those are political decisions. If you talk about the quality of education, you talk about the quality of healthcare, we talk about, the high, infant mortality rates that we have. We talk about the poor roads, those are all, political decisions. When you talk about, we not having electricity and having shutdowns, for example, in our country up to now, Facebook is still illegal. It is banned down. It is banned. Those are political decisions. Now, I was also aware of the apathy that my young generation, our generation was growing in. Most of them avoid politics. They avoid associating with politics because either it is too dangerous or too hot, or because they have opportunities to make a life that can allow them to access private services. To them, they don't care about the general masses of the people. But as a person who was raised by parents who heavily depended on the efficiency of the government to be able to to afford their children a good life or a meaningful life, I was aware that politics plays a very, very important role in ensuring that our society is better. And so, for me, when I started writing poetry, I wanted, and even when I was doing it in English, I wanted to create awareness that we as a generation have a role to play in our politics. It is not just about the politicians. It is not about the parliamentarians. It is about we, the people. We who have had the chance to go to school. We who have the chance to perform in theater. We who have the privilege, to use our mouths as microphones. It is our role to speak the pains of the people. It is our role to bring the plight of the underprivileged into the limelight. And so for me, I have always used my space to talk about the uncomfortable. And in fact, I don't know if you know this, some of my plays have been banned from the National Theatre.
Because I didn't know that some of your books or some of your plays have been banned at the Uganda National Theatre.
Yes.
And that brings another question I wanted to ask you, yeah? The environment of Uganda for activism and writers who are activists is not that good. True, are you not worried because your books have been banned? Your plays have been banned? Are you not worried about your life as a person who is really using your voice to speak for the voiceless?
I will be lying to you if I say I am not worried. But Otako, this is what I have told myself. I have prepared. I am ready to die. That's the first thing. Secondly, every time I go on stage to recite a poem, I know that that might be my last moment alive. I know it for a fact. So I deliver my poems, I recite my poems as if someone is going to arrest me, or as if someone is going to shoot me when I walk off stage. So it is something that I am aware of. But then I am also aware that I have not done anything wrong. Like I have not committed any crime. I am within the ambit of the law. The law is on my side. Whatever is not on my side is unlawful. I have the freedom to express myself. It is enshrined in the Constitution. It is a God-given right. It is not the government. It is not the gun that gives me that right. The right is inherent. For sure this, that I don't just publish my works. I've also published the works of people like Kakwenza, who have been, arrested. Kakwenza is a Ugandan author who was arrested and tortured for his novel and memoir. And now he lives in Germany in exile. And I'm still in Uganda, selling his books, marketing his books, because I know it is not a crime to write a novel.
Yes.
No matter what the current regime postures, it is not a crime.
Yeah.
And for me, no matter how much they use fear, for me, I want to stand on the side of the law. I want to stand on the side of the truth and say, come and buy. Someone has to stand and take a firm stand and say, this is the law, this is what is right. No matter what you do, this is for me the legacy that I want to, at least if I want people to remember me, I want people to remember Kagayi as someone who stood on the side of the truth, somebody who stood on the side of the law, and if it means paying the price for it, come what may.
Make sure to leave a review. This makes our day and fuels future episodes. Hear my true story. Hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Hear my true story.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned about a Ugandan publisher called Kakwenza.
A Ugandan author, yes.
A Ugandan author, yeah. A Ugandan author. And I followed his story when he was arrested, tortured, and then is living in exile here in Germany. And then you publishing his books in Uganda, as you have said. And then this brings another question. I mean, why did you as a person decide to publish a book when you see the writer of that book is in exile because of the same book and you are publishing it? Don't you get threats?
First and foremost, why did I decide to publish Kakwenza? First and foremost, he's a very good writer. He's a very, very good writer. The book is humorous. The book the story is engaging. The story is Ugandan. It is political commentary. It is social commentary. So for me, it is a book. The contents of the book fall within the ambit of the work that I wish Ugandans to read. That is the first reason. It is a good book. Secondly, it is selling. People want to read him. People want to read Kakwenza's works. And for me, I am also aware of the fact that most Ugandan writers who run to exile find foreign publishers who publicize their books in Europe, but not in Uganda. So you find that Ugandans don't have access to these works. So for me, as a local publisher, I wanted, and I still want, people to access these books on the local market. I want these books to be produced locally because it is a local Ugandan story. Now, do I get threats? Fortunately, no. I work in an environment that is very volatile. There are some people who don't want to work. Some of the censorship that we face is from our peers. Now there are some organizations that don't want to associate with Kagayi or Kitara Nation, all my brand, because I am publishing Kakwenza, I am performing my poems, I am writing plays that are political, So some of the censorship that we face is self-censorship, and it is from within it is from our own peers. It is not even from the state. It is our friends who drum up, who beat the drums of fear, And I am lucky that I'm here to face the tragedy that Kakwenza has faced. I don't wish it upon myself, but then I also know that I have not done anything wrong.
Okay, yes. I get that. Could you maybe just tell us about the book from Kakwenza, what the title of the book, what it is called?
So Kakwenza wrote a novel that is entitled The Greedy Barbarian, and it is about a fictitious country called Kalenga. And Kalenga is a country where this particular leader comes from another country and he becomes a president. But when he becomes a president, he mismanages the affairs of the state. And the book also foretells what happens to the president. He loses power and etc. But the story has been related to so many people as to be the story of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. But those names are not mentioned anywhere. It is a fictitious book. So Kakwenza was arrested for writing that novel and tortured. Then when he was released after, he wrote another book called Banana Republic, where writing is treasonous. And that book is a memoir about his experiences when he was taken to the criminal, to the chief militancy investigations, or in brackets CMI facilities, where he was tortured. And in that book, he chronicles how, when, and who tortured him, how it was done, how he was stretched and made naked, stripped naked, how he was whiplashed on the back, how they poured water on him, how they did waterboarding, etc. And then how he was being interrogated about the book and slapped left, right, and center. He talks about all that. He talks about how he was, they put a hood on his head and then they make him travel around. They took him to the Chireka, the Chireka facility where high criminals are kept, And so it is a book that chronicles what happened to him. Now, after its release, Kakwenza was arrested again and again tortured. And then when he comes out of prison, that's when at first those two books were self-published. It was after his second arrest that he approaches me and he talks about the possibility of Kagayi of Kitara Nation publishing his works. And it was after we had signed the contracts and made the deals that he was arrested the third time. And it is for the third time that he was badly beaten, and he came out with rotting flesh, and then his passport was confiscated, and then somewhere he managed to get out of the country and find himself in Berlin, where he is at the moment. And yes, so for just telling his story about what happened to him, he was arrested, and I asked him the question, why is it that he was so eager to tell his story even when he was still in Uganda? And he told me the same thing. He said, Kagayi, I don't want to wait for this government to leave power. I don't want to wait to first go to exile. I want to tell my story now. I want the Ugandans to know what is going on. I want the world to know what happens in Uganda when you write a novel, when you write a memoir about what has happened. So for me, his activism, his need for the story to be urgent, to be put out there, really coincided with my own understanding of what Ugandan literature should be, and our desire to make Ugandan literature popular within Uganda, and so that is why we kept working together.
Wow, it's really a hard story to listen to from your friend, a writer, and your friends have seen you. You met him when you came to German. You really met him, and you had conversations about these things.
Yes.
Yeah, I can just say I respect you for your energy and also for your strong voice to keep speaking about what is happening in Uganda and to speak for people who cannot speak for themselves. That's a very strong determination, my brother Kagayi. I'm so proud of you. That's what I could say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our dear listeners, I would like to say, because of time, we cannot continue, but you can join us in part 3 of this conversation as we continue to talk with Kagayi Ngobi to get to know more about what his publishing company does in Uganda and how it works with young people in schools and also within the communities of Uganda. I hope you don't miss this coming episode with Kagayi Ngobi.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.